So this is a short video presentation that I've given to a number of different students who are preparing for a law school exam essay or preparing for the bar exam where there's also essay questions. So what we're going to be covering is how to prepare an outline for an essay and then why you should do it. So one thing to keep in mind is that in law school you have different outlines for different purposes. So on the left I have what would be the beginning of a standard vertical outline from a contracts law class. So the very first major heading of your outline might be on formation of a contract, and underneath that you would have the subheadings that would include elements of contract formation. So for example, offer, acceptance, and consideration. And of course we would expect that underneath each of these subheadings there would be additional bullet point information. So for example, under offer, we would expect to see some of the key cases that deal with formation of a contract where the element of an offer was at issue, and we would expect to see certain key holdings from these cases. On the right, though, we have something different. I'm going to call this a horizontal outline. And the purpose of the horizontal outline is to help us prepare for our essay. So while on the left we have a contracts law course outline that summarizes the key concepts from our contracts law class, on the right what we have is what I'm calling this horizontal outline, in which we're preparing to write an essay response to a question on a law school exam. I'm using IRAC to organize this horizontal outline. You, of course, might have slightly different ways to organize your essay response, but I'll use IRAC because that's typical, where I is the legal issue, R refers to the governing law, A refers to the analysis or application of that law to the facts that were given, and then C is the conclusion. So here, for example, the student is analyzing whether there was a contract as of January 10th in that story, and then he proceeds to outline his rule, which is how do we create a contract, and then he starts applying that rule to the facts that he was given in this essay question. So it looks like someone said that he might be willing to sell something, so now the student has to analyze whether or not that constituted an offer or not. And then C is the conclusion. This is what the student concludes in terms of whether or not there was actually a contract. So we'll be getting a little bit more into the how that we would create this horizontal outline for an exam essay, but just a little bit on the why. Why do you want to prepare an outline before you actually start drafting your essay? And the reason is, if you just plunge in without a plan, things can go awry. And what you're looking for on a bar exam essay or a law school exam essay is something closer to what's on the left than what's on the right. If you've got things organized in some sort of an intelligent and logical manner, you're going to get a lot more points than if your exam is jumbled. And the outline is going to help you create this organized structure. So we're going to start off with an example, and I'm just making up an example here for a criminal law exam. And so in our story, we'll say that there's an individual named David, and he wants to steal a car that Victor keeps in a shed. So there's the car that David wants to steal, and there's the shed behind Victor's house. So the shed is located behind Victor's house. Now we have Victor's house, and there's also this shed, and as we know, there is a car inside the shed. A number of people have pointed out to me, well, why doesn't David just steal a bicycle? I'm not sure why. Victor, in fact, loves this old car so much, he sleeps in the car in the shed every night. So at night, Victor goes into this shed where he keeps his beloved car, and he sleeps in the car in the shed at night. All right, so good to go. Now David, at 11 p.m., decides to pick the lock of the door to the shed by the light of this full moon, and he's going in there to try to steal the car that's located inside the shed. But aha, Victor wakes up and he grabs an old frying pan that's located inside the shed. He hits David. David falls to the floor, and because this is a criminal law exam, things are going to get hectic for the next few paragraphs. David will probably get up, and then thinking that he's going to be killed by Victor will in fact kill Victor before Victor can kill him, and things are going to get crazy because it's a criminal law exam, but we're just going to stop here. Now, if you try to answer this criminal law exam essay question without an outline, there's a really good chance you're going to end up with something really, really jumbled like this. You're going to have all sorts of ideas, but they're going to get so mixed together, you're going to leave out important points, you're going to forget to put down points of law, you're going to jump to some sort of a conclusion, and then without this good analysis, things are just going to be really disorganized, and you're not going to get as many points as you should. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start organizing our essay by the possible crimes that each defendant could be accused of. So just to start off with, we're going to say that David is going to be accused of committing common law burglary. Now, there's other crimes that will be committed in the course of this essay, or other possible crimes. So, for example, did Victor commit a crime when he hit David with a frying pan? If David starts to attack Victor, is now David going to be guilty of a crime? And there's going to be a pretty in-depth analysis on your essay, but for now we're just sticking with David, who's being accused of common law burglary. Now, to create our answer, we're going to put our ideas in the form of a horizontal outline. And we're going to use this IRAC structure. Again, when you write your essay, you might use a different format depending on your professor. And of course, you want to stick with what your professor says, but this is just an outline of how you can do this to help organize your answer. Now, also, I'm going to be talking about the elements of common law burglary here. Of course, if your professor tells you something different or you've read a different point of law, you should certainly go by what you've learned in class. This is illustrating how we can create an outline. The purpose of this is not to teach you what common law burglary is. Stick with what your professor says. So our legal question is David guilty of common law burglary? So the first thing we want to do is put down what we know about the rule of common law burglary. And because we've been a good student, because we created a good course outline, we know that, okay, burglary is breaking and entering into another person's house at night with the intention to commit a felony in the house. So those are the elements that we're going to say are the elements of common law burglary. Now, it can be, in fact, that we've learned so much that we're able to quickly put down a lot of other information into the rule. So I added these bullet points here. This is everything we know about breaking and entering, for example, that you don't need to literally break down the house. It can just be simply opening a closed door without permission. You can use threats to gain access to a house. That would also be considered breaking and entering. We can also add some more bullet points to our second elements. What's another person's house? Well, it has to be some sort of permanent dwelling. It has to be a place where a person normally sleeps. And we might also remember certain other points about what it means to be nighttime, what it means to intend to commit a felony. So, for example, you just need to intend to commit the felony. You don't actually have to commit the felony when you get into the house. It's enough that you intended to commit this felony. Now, when you write out your outline, you might not write this all out in full. You might be able to just abbreviate this quickly and be able to remember it for purposes of your exam. But I'm putting pretty much things in full here just for purposes of illustration. So now that we got our question and our rule, now we can start applying the rule to our facts. The first element of burglary is breaking and entering. Well, what did David do? Well, he picked a lock to get into the shed, and he certainly didn't have permission. So that looks like breaking and entering under the rule. Now, it has to be another person's house, and you've probably figured out this is a slightly tricky question. We know that the shed isn't connected to the house. We know there's a frying pan in this shed, but there's no evidence that there's some sort of kitchen facility or any other facilities inside the shed. On the other hand, Victor sleeps there. So this is going to be a little bit dicey. Is this shed a house or not? But we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep going. We're going to look at, well, it has to be nighttime. Well, it's 11 p.m. That's nighttime. And who cares that there was a full moon? So maybe it was bright outside because of this full moon, but that doesn't transform nighttime into daytime. Next, there has to be the intention to commit a felony. Well, he planned to steal a car. Okay, that sounds like a felony. And the fact that he, according to our story, didn't successfully steal his car, that doesn't matter because we know that David had this intention. Now, the last part that we have to write about is our conclusion. And I just wrote down, you decide. You tell me if you think each of these elements is satisfied. And the reason why I'm not putting down this answer here is because typically the conclusion that you come to is not really as important as demonstrating that you understand the rule and that you can apply the rule to the facts. So now our answer is going to start to get a little better because it's going to be organized and less jumbled. So in our exam essay, I think we would just start off with saying, okay, David as to common law burglary. The first issue is whether David is guilty of common law burglary, and we're going to come to this conclusion. We'll put the conclusion first. The court will likely conclude that he is not guilty of common law burglary because the shed is not a house. Okay? Now we're giving our conclusion first. Let's go into the rule. The rule is that burglary is breaking and entering into a house at night with intention of committing a felony therein. And we're going to work off of this outline that we created to prepare an essay that's a lot better organized than what we would have if we didn't have this horizontal outline. Now, you probably have a lot of questions. How do I address sub-issues? Where do I put my affirmative defenses? When it comes time to write the exam, how exactly do I do that? What if I hate outline? And what do I do if I forget the rule? When do I abbreviate? When do I write out things in full sentences? Well, I'm sure this works on crim law, but is this going to work on a torts exam or a property exam? And all those are really good questions, but perhaps the most important question is this going to work for you? Will this work for me? And I think it will. I have worked with a number of different students who have been able to successfully answer exam essays after they've practiced creating this horizontal outline. And that's where practicing comes in. If you try to do this on the day of the exam, it might not work. Just like a baseball player is probably going to have to practice before the game. If you practice creating these types of outlines before your exam, you are going to do a lot better. So will this work for you? Yeah, I think it's going to, but you're going to need to practice. So thanks very much, and talk to you soon. Bye now.